Okay, hey everybody, here it comes, this time for sure. Two more deep breaths. The epic Chiat beyond the binder Nissan analysis teardown. I'll be nice, but I won't lie. Okay, the thing is, I do not have Nissan work in the Chiat binder. Partly because of the year that the binder got full, and also because of the admittedly love and hate relationship I've had with the work on Nissan. Remember, this is Chiat, my favorite agency. And you know, earlier today on LinkedIn, people were talking about the great Porsche ads. Remember, those Porsche ads that founded came from Chiat. Like these headlines? And this, in Germany, there are no getaway cars. That's not a Fallon ad. That's a Chiat. Fucking dang. And the thing that changed was the desire to grow. And again, as the oft repeated, let's see how big we can get without being bad, Jay Chiat wanted to know, and Guy said, I really don't want to know. You know what you know, and you do the great work. And I think Porsche would have been a long-term client there. But how do you compare 12 million a year or so in billings with 120 or 150 or whatever it was? At the time in 1987, it was the single biggest account move, I guess, in North America or in the business. And I don't even know if they approached Nissan or Nissan put them on the list. I think it was at Donor. And the only other agency that was in the finals with them was kind of a, no offense to anyone who worked there, kind of a nobody agency. Because it's interesting, back then especially, not so much today, but back then it was life or death if you had a conflict. And all the big agencies had a car. They had a car account, so they couldn't, pitch for Nissan. And Nissan being number 2, number 3 Japanese brand at the time anyway, you know what the advertising was then? The name is Nissan. You can find those on YouTube, but I don't recommend you do. The name is Nissan. Because remember, it used to be Datsun. The Datsun 240Z, a car I fell in love with as a kid. Especially if they were orange, I kind of like that color, Oranje. But anyway, Datsun, even the sound of the name had a lot of fun and energy to it, Datsun B10 pickup, the Datsun 240Z, and the Datsun this and that, And when it had to change the name to Nissan, because that was the Japanese name, a lot of energy came out of the brand. By the way, settle in, relax. This is going to be a long one, I think. A lot of energy came out of that brand because Datsun, it's like ba-ba. And Nissan, it just goes Nissan, and you close your mouth. Nissan. Datsun does too, but that in the middle and the D and the T is so percussive, has energy that Nissan doesn't. Nissan. Well, I happen to know because I did work for Nissan for a particular car dealership, and we did some amazing stuff, which after I do finish with Chiat, maybe I'll do my own case histories from the past and current and future. So anyway, Nissan became the name of the company, and the advertising was pretty damn dull. And even the 240Z became the 260Z and the 280Z, and the thing started getting bigger in the back seat, and it was just turned into a heavy nothing. It didn't have that zip of the 240Z. It became whatever. Kind of brand put on weight, let's put it that way. So when the new business team at Chiat, and by the way, it's like Porsche and Americans who call it Porsche. It particularly offends me when agencies are called Fallon, calling Chiat. I don't care how hip you think it is. This isn't just the name of a made-up thing. These are people who formed an agency. And if you can't say Chiat Day, maybe don't say it at all. So anyway, the thing is, when you pitch something that big and you're an agency that isn't that big, you know what that means? Weekends, nights, weekends, nights, weekends, nights. Those t-shirts, Chiat Day and Night. It was a badge of honor, but no one really enjoyed it that much. It was a fait accompli of a dystopian culture shirt in a way. But like they did for Porsche with the Porsche is working on your cars, which is right here. And speaking of Chiat Day, and whatever it's called today, it pissed me off very much in the second book, the 50 book, when they reproduced this, Chiat Day is working your cars, and because they didn't have a good clean version of it, the typeface at the bottom, they retypeset it, and they didn't match it. It was close, but not quite. And is there anything worse than wearing black and navy blue together? They didn't match the typography at the bottom exactly like this. Somebody didn't fucking care. So Chiat Day is working in your car, and different people under there. In fact, I know some of the people under here personally. And then they did. Chiat Day wants to drive your cars with something very interesting, a poster, and they printed this in the Mazzoli book with their driver's licenses, although I think J's at the top was expired at the time. You could, depending who you were, you find out these people's actual home addresses. More about that when we talk beyond the binder about my relationship with Lee Clow and his late mother. So Chiat Day wants to drive your cars. So that's kind of a nice way. Look, our driver's licenses, it's like the people who actually worked on the pitch was at least that many people. And these are people who, like I said, nights and weekends, wanting something that big. And the problem with wanting something that big, when you want to grow that much, is that often you lose the spark of what made your work good in the first place. When you have that kind of pressure, we've got to do something great in this. We've got to land this business. Think what it means. It means we finally all get raises. Hey, I can get promoted. We can get help. All the things you do. What money means to you. And all that pressure load up. We got to have the best idea of all. Oh, the greatest idea. And of course, I would love to have been in some of those rooms to see what ideas came before what got sold. Although I do know something about that. Nights and weekends, all through the summer of 1987. And finally they came up with something they wanted to pitch, which was an interesting sort of turn of the phrase. Nissan. They were trying to say cars built for the human race. Or something like that. And basically it was like, oh, wait a minute, they make trucks too. So they had to boil it down to, in Nissan, built for the human race. And you see, back in those days, when you did your advertising and sponsorships, like on ABC's Golf or whatever, some other announcer would say the slogans. And it would be funny when they'd get someone, I remember the voice on the Golf. I think I knew who the guy was, but he would say things like, brought to you by, in Golf, Nissan, built for the human race. They'd say, built for the human race, built for the human race, built for the human race. All those variations, and it's like the brand can't be expressed the way maybe it was intended, but that's the way things were in the 80s. So built for the human race, in its spirit, was trying to get intimate with how people felt about their cars. And then the next thing was, well, we really got to make the company stand for something, like with Porsche, getting into the culture of Nissan and Porsche. The problem is they went to Weissach in Germany, and they got into the Germans' who worked building a German car. They didn't go so deep into Japan and bring the Japanese culture here. They had to make an American thing. So it was the Americanization of a Japanese brand. And they had to try to find the culture of what that was. And unfortunately, there was nothing special about it. Every car company had engineers who talked about the designs, engineers who thought about what if we did this, what if we did that, employees who may have talked about how people use their cars. It's one of those things that I'm sure happened everywhere, but no one ever talked about it. So they had the idea to, and it's interesting that in the Rizzoli book and in the 50 book, they do not make reference to the original campaign, really. However, the the story about the creative, I can tell you this. They had this idea, what they wanted to do is show the actual Nissan engineers in casual, random conversations about cars, their cars, etc., etc. They wanted to really capture the reality of what the Nissan engineers actually say. And they thought about it, and they worked on 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 it, and they thought about 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 it, and they realized it wasn't going to work. They had to hire actors. And when you're in that kind of space where you've got media dates pre-bought, you've got to launch something, you're trying to make it the greatest thing in the world, all this pressure, and the thing you really wanted to do, you have to do a version of it, even if you do hire the king of shaky cam, Leslie Dector at the time. No one ever got fired for hiring Leslie Dector, South African shaky cam guy. They got actors to pretend to be the engineers and to shoot them in the most, kind of hip way possible. But actors are, after all, actors. And when you're trying to act like you're a clever employee, it's a recipe for disaster. And the industry, when the campaign broke, shit all over it. I used to have the magazine insert because, they did another magazine insert, and I no longer have it because this may come out in another story if I continue to expose my life with Chiat Day. I used to have flat files full of tear sheets of theirs from the agency and lots of other things, and I gave them all away, and I shredded and burned some many years ago. And I had the original insert that said, Nissan builds cars and trucks for the most important race of all. Open up and says the human race. And it was all the pages and like interesting headlines, just what you expect from the Apple and the Porsche and everything it inserts. But the problem is that first campaign, they just had these really, unfortunately, largely fake feeling employees talking. And it was just pushing so hard to try and be something it couldn't. It was the biggest trip and fall Chiat Day ever did, I think, on that scale. The whole industry saying, okay, Chiat Day, now you've got a big client, you've got a big car brand, let's see what you do. And it really wasn't that Chiat Day at all. It was a Chiat Day version of an ordinary thing. So, let me read to you from the Rizzoli book. In the LA office, they have spent 2 months, well, maybe 2 months and 1 million hours of overtime, preparing to pitch the account of the Nissan Motor Corporation at $150 million. It will be the single biggest account move in the history of advertising at that time. It is also unusual because Chiat Day has been cast in the unlikely role of favorite, which makes the LA creative director feel this is one he must win. Again, that means a lot of money to that creative director who sweat his balls off for how long? seeing retirement down the road and wondering, right? It's natural. A lot of people there wanted more money at Chiat Day, and a big account like that meant finally, and that pressure is insurmountable. Back to our story. Well, 2 nights before the pitch, the creative director is up all night checking every slide of every ad to be presented. These are slides. The night before the pitch, he watches as the rehearsal for the 3-hour presentation runs 7 hours long. Have you been there? I've been there. I've been there. And the food I ate, and the beer I drank, and the sleeplessness I got, oh, to be on. The day of the pitch. The presentation, he believes, has gone great. That weekend, the agency throws a huge party on the beach. They did that. And while the creative director is smiling, there is still that little doubt. It is the creative experience that if something can go wrong, if it can go wrong, it will. Monday and Tuesday pass. Wednesday is his birthday. I know when his birthday was. I know what year this was. I know exactly where I was then. He's at work for a couple hours when Jay comes into his office. This was so big that Jay was there that whole week and that whole time overlooking the whole thing, even though he was, running the New York office. And then Jay said, Nissan wants to talk to us on a speakerphone. The whole place. Dun, 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 dun. They cram into a tiny room with a speakerphone. 20, 40, 100 people. They're spilling out of the room and down the hall. The advertising committee of Nissan is on the speakerphone. And the Nissan guy, Magnarelli, asks if everybody is there. Jay says, yes. He asks if the creative director is there. Jay says, yes. He asks if the creative director can hear him. The creative director says, yes. In that case, the man from Nissan says, there's something I'd like to tell you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lee. Happy birthday to you. You won the account, and that's where everything went nuts. And then it's like the movie, the 1972 great, almost documentary style film with Robert Redford, the candidate. After he wins, he's with his manager in the hotel room all alone, people clamoring, the media. What do we do now? What? What do we do now? They go out, the doors closed, we're left in an empty room. Now you got to do it. So again, the not exactly Chiat Day-like first work comes out. And of course, people like me, the first thing we thought of, compare this to the Porsche work that you were doing at the very end. It was smart, it was beautiful, it was cool, it was winning awards. Now, let's move past the introductory TV. The print that went with everything in the first few months was generally ass-kickingly great. Like, built for the human race. Aha, yep, that's what I do with my truck. Okay, Nissan, you got me. And speaking of trucks, this wonderful spread, avoid the human race. How much mileage can we get out of our line? And then, I'm just pulling from the book here, and if it's in the book, I think it's generally pretty good. The first one, anyway. There's some stuff in the second book. Well, anyway, remember what happened to the last guy who didn't use original body parts? Every manufacturer had ads and posters that said, buy, authenticated, real, original manufactured parts. But that was more fun. Cited for squashing bugs. Yeah, when you're a car company, you've got a million things you got to say. But when the double-page magazine ads in the car magazines came out, it started to really hit its stride. The Racing Heritage thing, where you see an overview of the Nissan GTB ZX Turbo, an overview of a 300ZX. It says, basically, we took the same idea and added carpet. That's nice. That's nice. The one below, I love this one. Most people who buy economy cars are missing a few screws, which is a simple way of just trying to say we make them more carefully. But deciding to make an ad like that, it's really VW. Very much like what VW did Golda and Bernbach in the 60s. That kind of thing, taking something mundane and making it kind of cool. This one, I always like this one. It's hot in the desert. And this one, the Nissan van reduces road noise. I defy you to find any ad for a minivan, especially a print ad, that speaks to minivan people as well as this one does. And if you do, post it. I'll see it. And if it's better, I'll admit it. I wouldn't wager, though. So, Nissan's work, they eventually, had to, is there any more in the Rizzoli book? Oh, yes, of course there is. They had these commercials, which were, and these aren't really in order in the book, I don't think, but these kind of ads where they showed Leslie Dutcher style shots, shaky cam with people washing their car and a woman walking away from her car with her wiping with her dress, showing obsessive feelings about cars and, people who, it's just kind of like B-roll kind of humanity stuff. And then, of course, they had the racing stuff. And they had, what was that? Oh, more racing stuff. So in other words, they used the racing, again, to support the idea. And that's what a car company does. If you have a racing program, you use it to show something about your R&D. So the commercials, man, they were okay. But it really, even when they were still using Built for the Human Race, when they're still using the font Papal Pontifex condensed, and I've used Papal Pontifex since then. That's the thing, one thing I did. Every time they got a new account, I had to figure out what the font was, and sometimes I would just call Aldous and talk to someone, and they tell me exactly, and I tried to get it locally. Or on your Macintosh, you had to find who could sell it to you. I do like the simplicity and the strength of, and the strategic power of saying the Nissan Maxima, the 4-door sports car. That's a nice idea. And the things where they started getting a little bit more artsy California, like, when the engineers at Nissan designed their 240SX, they wanted to have certain acceleration characteristics. And you would watch in the car, and then it suddenly turns into a roller coaster, but the road. And it kind of blends the idea, how you feel in a roller coaster and being stuck to the road as it goes like that. Which they did there, and it goes all the way across. In this book, you read across and across. So you see where that was done. It was actually art. It was like automobile advertising is art when they get something so simple like that. So this is quality here. I would put this particular part of the Nissan Chiat work up against any car advertising ever. And the thing I'm going to end with, because the Rizzoli book ends with it, is probably one of the best things they ever did, period. Because this is an idea that would work today just exactly like today. They decided to take their product, the Nissan Pathfinder, which was kind of an SUV before we called them that. And it was kind of a rough, simple thing. And they wanted to show how great it was, and they had the idea. Why don't we get some people, ordinary people, to drive it from somewhere in the U.S. and go all the way into South America or something and take it over all the roads, and we'll follow them and da-da-da. Well, that's what they did. And now there would be episodes on YouTube and Instagram and everything. You'd follow them. You'd be messaging the drivers and talking to them but even then, they did it with TV, and they did it with magazines where they did these lush, like that's the couple's scrapbook and their travel book where they're keeping, Polaroids and even little artifacts. Like even here, so you got souvenirs of different things in there. This work It just demanded romance. In other words, like an armchair traveler who looks at this thinks, wow, to do something like that, that looks actually kind of dangerous. Wow. And, it was Kurt and Marty Anderson from out of Chicago, and the first commercial was actually one of the best because it literally just starts with saying, this is where we're going to go. This is what we're going to do. But first, there's the Dan Ryan Expressway. Like they're all packed up ready to go, but then like in rush hour traffic leaving, which is, name me a car company that shows their car in rush hour traffic. That campaign, front to back, inside and out, and all media, was perfect. And again, today, you could do the same thing, but it would be less in the imagination and more in the visceral watching. They'd have a Netflix series about doing the same thing, be a sponsored thing where Nissan produces the vehicle and someone drives it around the world and you see all the experiences, but they have the drama, people fighting, and then they're not talking to each other, and are they going to make it, reality TV. This may be a parent of reality TV, slightly guilty. So I think this campaign that was Road to Rio, as it was called, because they drove all the way to Rio. Now, of course, they did get airlifted through certain countries when the U.S. State Department said it wasn't safe for Americans to go driving, especially with a film crew. But it was 16 millimeter grainy stuff, and you can find some of the commercials on YouTube. I'll post some of them here. I may be posting a lot of things in this. And the point is, I cannot possibly talk about everything Chiat Day and now TBWA, Chiat Day, has done for Nissan. I can't talk about it all because there's been too much. They've never had an account this long, although you could say maybe Apple, technically, because of whatever, Apple and Nissan. We'll do this as part 1 and part 2. I'm just getting started.